Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Let's Talk PMA.
So you were talking to me the other day about how you were working with your girls on getting just their mental toughness, figuring out who they were and all their problems, just so that you could have a more family environment with your team, right? And then now they're kind of in that spot where you're getting to know them and your friendships are and their trust with you as coaches are starting to develop. But today, what I want to talk about is how do you go from developing that trust with your teams and building that family camaraderie to still being able as coaches to be tough on them, like to push them above and beyond where they want to go. So, how do you get from being their friend, kind of like a parent? You don't want to be their friend, but because you have to be able to discipline, you have to be able to teach, you have to be able to push them beyond their comfort zones.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of what I do is I just make sure that I understand that every player is different, and every player is going to react to things differently. And so that's why a lot of times when you're first meeting players, you're first starting with the team, you're kind of just doing a lot of things to feel them out. You're not really like getting super frustrated with things. You are helping them learn, but you're just trying to like understand who the players are as people and as athletes. And then from there, then that's when you kind of have your own boundaries. So I always have some kind of a boundary, like, yes, we're friends, but like I'm not your bestie, you know? So like I'm very close and friends with all of my players. And I think that's really good because of the trust. But, there are things that we don't talk about. There are things that I like if they were to bring it up, I'm very vague or very just like cut it short. Like I don't need to share everything with them and they don't need to share everything with me. And a lot of athletes know that already. So that does help with the younger ones. Sometimes it's a little bit harder because younger kids are kind of nosy. Um, and they don't quite understand that, but it's easier with the high schoolers and the older kids that to have that kind of boundary. But honestly, my very first thing is just try to figure out who they are because I know that I have to discipline or I have to correct in a specific way for specific athletes. I can't just like go hard and yell and pound into a certain athlete because she might just cry. It might just make her cry and might just make her confidence go down. But some athletes thrive off of that. And so it's just like, that's why it's good to know your players on a personal level because you know how they react to things and you know who they are. And that I feel like that just makes it a lot easier.
Well, showing them that, you have expectations, getting to know them and knowing their personalities, knowing, what breaks them, what makes them cry, what makes them break down, where they are during that day. If they've had a bad day, okay, how am I going to get you out of your head so that I can push you? And they have to understand that you still have expectations. You're still going to push them hard. You're still going to, have expectations of them performing because that's what you're there for.
Yeah.
You're there to play the game. You're there to learn. You're there to get better. You're there to win. Right.
Yeah.
And so you have to have build that trust with your team and your players, but you have to also have expectations. You can't just go in and say, okay, I'm going to be your friend, or I want you to trust me. But just because you trust me doesn't mean that I'm going to let you do whatever you want. Just because you hurt today doesn't mean I'm not going to push you today.
Yeah. And that's something that we have had to find like a pretty good balance with. And it has been a little bit difficult too because we are incorporating, all of the mental toughness of everything. and diving deep into personal issues. And so that's made us even more personable and even more like friendship with our players. And so it's like, okay, now we really have to make sure, okay, when we're, gathered together and going through mentalities and stuff, it's a different relationship than when we're on the court, when we're in practice. And so we have had to like make it known, okay, we've gotten to know each other. We got the trust. We're on the same page. Now it's time. We're not going to be soft on you anymore. Okay? We have expectations. Like it is still summer and everything, but like we are growing, we are building. Like we're done being soft. We're done with you guys like just pouting and like trying to dictate what you want and want to do and what you don't want to do. So it is like a fine line, especially when you start diving into like working on the mental side of everything. So that's something for coaches that if you are going to do this program, you need to make sure that your athletes understand when we're working on mental stuff, I need you to be completely open and honest with us, at least to an extent, or at least open and honest in the ways of doing the work. But then when we're in practice, when we're in weights, when we're in games, it's not the same relationship. Like we are going to be hard on you. We are going to push you. We aren't going to be light on you. We're not going to baby you, and we're not your therapists. So it's a fine line. It's a very, very fine line in finding like when to say okay and when to say no.
Working through the workbook is a great thing because we're setting goals, we're doing the self check, and we're doing the 4 C's. And so yes, at the very beginning you're learning who the kids are and their personalities, but you're also learning like what's their expectations of themselves. And so then as coaches, you're learning who they are, but what are their goals? If they want to be the best in whatever that their sport is, then it's your job to continue with the program saying, okay, where's your mental state right here? Let's check it out. And let's do that self-check. Let's do that, so that you're okay for me to push you. You have to just kind of put them back in perspective. Okay, where are you? Okay, now let's bust our butt because we gotta go.
And that's why I'm saying it's such a fine line too. And I'm not saying that like they're two separate. They are separate, and you have to be able to include like, okay, like we had a meeting and went through all of our mental stuff, and then we had practice directly after it. And we got everything out on the floor. Everybody was on the same page. Everyone knew where their teammates were at and where the coaches were at and everything like that. Then we go into practice and they're not there, like they aren't showing up. And so that's where it's like, okay, we just went through all of this. Everybody's on the same page. You all know where your teammates are at. It's on you. Yes, coaches do need to help with it especially if it's extreme, but this is why teammates are so important. And so it's like your teammates know where you're at, and they're the ones that have to be able to pick you up and push you and say, you're okay. It's going to be okay. Focus on this, like to keep you going. That's why you have teammates, and that's why you have, other people within your sport, is that you have a support system. And I'm not saying that the coaches aren't and can't be that, because they are, absolutely. But especially for a sport like basketball, you have to rely on your teammates.
Yeah. Well, and it's any sport, teammates are, they're in your crowd, or who's going to be your cheering, who's cheering you on, who's giving you that extra oomph to keep going. Right. And
Yeah.
so if I'm on the floor and the bench is cheering and getting excited for whatever's happening, it's going to motivate me more to perform. Right. And if I'm running and I'm running out of steam, doing lines, but the whole baseline is cheering me on, it's going to help me to get through it as it's hard. And so, but it's learning, it's teaching. Not everyone's been taught how to do that. And so, for the coaches to extra emphasize to the team, hey, we gotta be a team. We gotta cheer each other on. We've gotta be, have each other's backs so that, you can get through those hard times, because it's hard. Every sport is hard. It's physically and emotionally and mentally just exhausting. But the reward at the end, if you succeed, is phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, and that's the point of sports. They're not supposed to be easy or everybody would do it. And I mean, I told my players that yesterday. I was like, this isn't supposed to be easy. And you're supposed to make mistakes, because if you make mistakes, that's how you know you're getting better. And so I think sometimes for coaches, especially once you've like gained the trust and your players, you can be hard on them, but sometimes you have to just do a little reality check and say, do you see that we only have 20 people here? Because it's hard. That's why there's only 20 people here, is because it's hard. And you're here to learn. You're here to get better. And if everyone could just do it and it was that easy, then this gym would be filled with hundreds of people and we wouldn't even be practicing. We would just be playing. Yeah. There would be no reason to practice. There would be no reason to lift weights if it was that easy. And so sometimes it's like, I think you can be hard and you can yell and you can try to get your players to be in check, but you also sometimes need to just be like, hey, reality check, this isn't supposed to be easy.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what's hard today may not be that hard next week. And so it'll make it more fun. Because, you can just say, hey, remember last week when you couldn't do that? Look how much easier it is this week. How much fun is that? I mean, that's a part of sports, when you couldn't do something a week or 2 weeks ago, and all of a sudden you can do it, and it's not a big deal, and it's not as hard. And so all of a sudden it's so much more fun because you couldn't do it before, and now you can.
Something, I can't remember who quoted it or where I heard it, but I remember hearing it. I think an NBA player or something said it, but it's like, if you aren't making mistakes, you aren't getting better. Like you have to make mistakes to get better, and if you're not making mistakes, you aren't going hard enough. If I go through a practice and I have a 100% perfect practice, I didn't go hard enough. Mm-hmm. I didn't push myself hard enough. And a lot of things that I say to my athletes is, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's sports. That's just sports, is you should be uncomfortable. That's life. I mean, you have to push yourself to achieve your goals, your dreams, your whatever. You have to push yourself, and you have to make mistakes. You have to kind of backtrack. You have to take 10 steps back to be able to take the 2 steps forward sometimes. And that's just how it is. But that just means that you're getting better.
That means the reward's going to be so much greater, Yeah. And I don't think that kids understand that. I know kids don't understand that, I remember when we were coaching and, we didn't have good teams. We had bare minimal, players that didn't know anything. But after every game, we evaluated, what do we need to work on this next game or this next practice? What do we need to work on so that we can, and by the end of the season, it was so fun to watch the kids, because from when we first got them to the end, they would improve so much. And that was all the sports, the very beginning, we'd say, oh, they lost, or, oh, they didn't know how to do this. Let's watch them grow throughout the season, because they're going to be 100% different. And that's because they're doing the hard things. They keep pushing, they keep going. They're not quitting, and like we always told you guys, if you're going to start something, you're going to finish it out, because just because it got hard doesn't mean that we're going to allow you to quit. And that was just because we wanted to see you succeed and show yourself that you can succeed. You just have to follow through with it. And that's what, right now you have to show your players that, yeah, it's hard and your body hurts and it kind of sucks right now, but in a little bit, it's not going to suck so bad because your body's going to get used to it and it's going to start being fun again.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, for coaches, I think the first thing that you really need to do is just get to know your players on a personal level. Understand them, understand what they're going through, and sometimes knowing where their head's at is going to help you to understand how you need to go about things. Not everybody's going to react positively and make a change or make a good difference when they're just being yelled at. Not everybody responds to that. And I'm not saying you can't be hard on players, but you have to know who your audience is. I'm not going to scream and yell at third and fourth graders the way I would at my high schoolers. It's just knowing who your players are, knowing what they're capable of. And yes, you can be passionate. Yes, you can want them to be more and do more, but understand their level, push them, but don't diminish them. And that's a really fine line is yes, you have to be hard on them to be able to make them get better and to work, but you don't have to diminish them. And sometimes you can go so hard on someone that it just makes them not want to play anymore. Like a lot of my athletes, they've never had a good coach before, and their last coach just absolutely demolished all of their confidence, and they just they don't want to play. And it's hard because we're bringing them such a different atmosphere, but the game's not fun for them anymore. And that's really sad. And that's not a coach's job, is not to diminish someone. Is to get them to be better, and it's to make them be confident.
Well, as a coach, learning to challenge them so that they can be better, challenge them in a positive way that makes them want to work harder, because putting them down and honestly, girls and boys are different, you know, and, yeah, it's been a few years since we've actually coached personally, but, and I know things have changed, but there's still that difference. Girls have a lot more emotions than boys do in most cases, so you have to go at it in a different perspective and not as hard. I had a coach that I loved, and he was hard on us, but we knew he cared about us. And then I had a coach that I don't think he could have cared less about us, and all he was diminished us, and all he did was tell us how crappy we were, and we hated playing for him. We just flat out decided we weren't going to play for him anymore, because he was so hard on us. And so there's such a difference in, yeah, you can have a coach that works your ass off, and pushes you to your limits, but you do it because you trust them and because they care about you. But if a coach is doing the same thing and then every little mistake, he takes it as a mistake and not as a learning opportunity and just tells you you're crap, I don't want to play for you anymore, because it's not helping me any.
Yeah. No, and that's why it's hard, because a lot of people are old fashioned, is what I guess what you would call, because I mean a lot of times old fashioned is just the dig deep, so hard on all your athletes, just yelling, just aggressive. Sometimes that's kind of how old fashioned can come across, and some people think the way that we're teaching is soft, but it's not. And so it's not, we're not telling any athlete, or we're not telling any coach not to be hard on your athletes. That's not what we're saying at all. You just have to know who your athletes are and how are you going to encourage them, because you can be encouraging, like you were just saying, you had a coach that you knew cared about you, but they were so hard on you, and that's why it was you enjoyed playing for them. And I'm the same way with coaching. I am very, very hard on all of my athletes, but they all know that I'm never actually mad at them. Sometimes I get frustrated, but I care about them more than anything else. I don't want them to get hurt. I don't want them to hate the sport. Like, I'm going to be hard on you, but I care about you more than anything. And I think that's that type of coaching that we're trying to teach, because it's not, you would think that would be like a 50-50 of the, half of coaches are more, like, I'm hard on you, but I care about you. And half of you are just like, I'm just going to be hard on you and I don't care. But it's not like, it's
Mm.
honestly pretty rare to find coaches that are that passionate and like go hard on you and and tell you that they care about you. I feel like you're either no yelling and too soft or too hard kind of thing. Like, we're trying to teach everybody to have this happy medium. And so understand that there is a happy medium, and that's what you're there for, is to teach these athletes how to work towards their goals even when the odds are against them.
Yeah. Find your athletes' strengths and push them above and beyond to be the best that they can in those strengths. Because once they learn and see that they have those strengths, but they could be that much better in their sport when they are pushed harder, because it's a learned skill. And once a coach can see what their potential is, and a lot of times coaches think, if I'm so hard on them, I'm going to get them to reach their potential. But if they do it in the wrong way, that diminishes them, makes them feel like they are not a good player, then, and the player doesn't see what they're doing, then they're not gonna get they're not gonna achieve what they want them to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just think, just know your players, like we said, get to know them, get to know their strengths, push them to a level where they have to get to the next level. Push them hard, and but get to know them and care about the sport, care about them, and you'll have great success all the way around.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Find that happy medium of showing that passion and being hard on them, but also making sure that they understand that you care about them as well. So,
Say coaching's hard. You have to work just as much as the kids do to find that happy medium. And but once you do, your whole team is going to be complete. You can.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everybody, so much for watching. If you have any more questions or want to know how you can better yourself as a coach, feel free to comment or send us a personal message. We'd love to help you in any way, because we know that this isn't easy and this isn't something that can happen overnight. But we're here as a resource for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe below. Go check out our Instagram, our Facebook, and our website, www.letstalkpma. Go get your workbooks on there, and you can also message us on there as well if you have any questions or things that you need help with. So thank you all for watching, and we will see you all next week.